Let's go. Get in here. Get in here right now. Get in here. Hey, we got 30 minutes for the rest of our lives. 30 minutes for the rest of our lives. That's our battle first down. It happens. We get the ball. I promise you one thing. We're going to hit somebody and we're taking downfield for a touchdown. I guarantee you that.
Hello, Spartan Nation, and welcome to the Spartan Nation podcast, the first edition of this podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Savetic, and I am going to be covering the North Newton football season. Yes, I know it's a little bit late. It's going into week 5, and North Newton is now is going to be playing the Frontier Falcons. There's a reason behind it, why it's a kind of little bit late. For those who don't know me, or for those who do know me but don't really know my backstory, this will be the podcast for you, because this is, well, I shouldn't say this podcast, I should say this episode, because I will be getting into interviews with the coaches and players throughout the season. But this is more of a background story behind me and what led me up to this point. So, for those who don't know, I did graduate from North Newton. My parents graduated from North Newton, and so did my sister. I played football all the way up to my freshman year in high school. The reason I stopped in high school, I was 4'11" and 89 pounds versus people that were, 5'6" to 6 foot, ranging from 150 pounds to 3-something. I just didn't think mentally that I could do it, and that's something that I kind of look upon and kind of regret in a certain way, but don't regret at the same time, because it led me to this point. So going more into depth, my freshman year, actually after football practices, I would stay afterwards, and I would stay on the football field after I go change, shower, because my sister was still part of Pop Warner. And what would happen was I would go out in the football field, because Pat Brown was one of the coaches at the time at Pop Warner, and so was Byron Stevens. But Pat Brown was the defensive coordinator at the time, and I would just hang around there because I had to stay after practice anyways, because my mom obviously was the one that took me home. And that's where I kind of started to fall in love with the coaching aspect, because I was always intrigued with coaching, the X's and O's, the strategic matter behind a football field, what brought everything together. And I think that was more of a turning point, was, I could play the sport, or do I want to kind of take the sport in as it is from an outside perspective and kind of analyze everything from a different look. And yes, some of you may be like, all right, I'm turning this podcast off. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But I must know enough, because the next year, Byron Stevens actually allowed me to kind of coach some of the offense. And we did pretty well that year. I ended up having my head shaved because we beat Tri-Central. It was Tri-Town. We beat Tri-Town in a playoff. And the bet was, if we beat Tri-Town, the players could shave our heads, and I ended up having my head shaved. But through that experience in high school, I wrestled all 4 years. Wasn't anything spectacular, but I wrestled. I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun for me. But leaving high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do in my life. I wanted to be a police officer. I wanted to do this. I wanted to be a construction worker. I wanted to do all these different things. Well, I went into the military because I didn't know what I was going to do. I am currently in the Army Reserves as well right now. At this point in time, I get out in July. But after I got back from basic training in AIT, I asked my mom, I said, you know what I really want to do? Is I really want to coach football. And that's something that I would really enjoy doing, is coaching, because I still love the aspect of coaching. It was something that drove me, and I really enjoyed it. And at the time, I had a job at Cabela's, and my mom came to me one day and was like, hey, North Newton is hiring for a junior high assistant coach. And I was like, all right, cool. I want to take that. I want to take that right now. So I did, I had to do some paperwork, stuff like that. And I was coaching with Jason Ehrenholz at the time. And going from there, about 3 weeks in the season, he allowed me to kind of call the defense. And that was my first taste. And I thought, I did pretty well as far as that. And I would say that for the credit, there was a lot of 8th graders that were really good. At the time, Colin Wagner was really good. Todd DeYoung was good. Vince Taylor was good. David Sharinga. A handful more of players that were really good at the time. But the 3 players that I take from that season that are now seniors this year are going to be David Sharinga, Colin Wagner, and Vince Taylor. And I believe Trevor Kaloje at the same time. He was a part of that little program that we had going on at the 8th grade year. I kind of missed out their senior year this year because we'll get into that a little tad bit later. But going on from there, Jeff Bean was the head coach at the time at the varsity level, and I should say Byron Stevens kind of put a good word in for me, and he allowed me to come on Friday nights, and I would be in the press box writing down plays with Byron, and just kind of gaining all of that aspect of things, kind of learning a little bit here and there. Then the next year, Jeff Bean brought me on as the assistant coach with Sam Zachary and TJ Newton. I was just kind of there. I was helping out with TJ with the kickoff team, and I was the kickoff and kickoff return person for the JV level. Still learning the ways of the coaching aspects of things. Going into the next year, Sam Zachary left, went to Tri-County, and TJ took over as the head coach, and he was the offensive coordinator and I was the defensive coordinator. I still had kickoff and kickoff return, but at the varsity level, I had the kickoff as well. So at the time, what we're looking at for the next years coming were the head coach was Jeff Bean, also the offensive coordinator. Then it was Scott Rao, who is the current head coach right now, who was the defensive coordinator. Then TJ and I were part of the JV staff. Going on to my last year, Jeff Bean took a job as an AD at Lake Station. Scott Rao took over, and Newton went up to full-time varsity level as the offense coordinator, and I was stuck all by my lonesome at the JV level with no help. And what a year that was. It was a different kind of experience for me. A lot of games did get canceled, weather permitted, different things like that. But at the end of the year, I knew I had to do something with my life because I was going nowhere. And I was very blessed with my parents allowing me to stay with them, with me not really doing much. I, worked at Cabela's, I worked for the county, but I didn't feel like that was my calling. I felt like coaching was my calling, but yet again, I didn't want to go to 4-year school to get my teaching degree because at the time I was 22 and now I'm 23 years old and I kind of figure out what I want to do. But at the time, when I told Coach Rao I was the JV coach for softball, I coached softball for 2 years at the JV level, 1 year at baseball, and I was, believe, 3 years junior high for wrestling, and 2 years I was the assistant coach under Bruce Cunningham at the high school level for wrestling. Now, I have to tell Coach Rao that I could not coach any longer because I was going to Illinois Media School, and I don't think I could fit in the season this year. I don't think I could do it with internship. I did get an internship at Region Sports Nation on Facebook. Been doing Friday nights with them. Was also doing a radio show with ChicagolandSportsRadio.com that was ran through the school. I know I'm kind of jumping all over the place a little bit here, but I'm just trying to I don't want to keep this very long. So that's kind of a little bit about me. You'll learn a little bit about me more if you want to know, and maybe going throughout the podcast. But what I'm going to bring you in this podcast is not so much the X's and O's, but to kind of get to know the players and the coaches on the team that's coaching your kids, or if you're a fan, what your team is all about. And I will have video thrown up over the top of this, kind of highlights of the game, and just different things like that. We'll just kind of talk about it and so on and so forth. So where you're going to be able to find these podcasts are going to be on Spreaker.com. Spreaker only has the audio portion, does not have the video portion. That's why I'm posting it to my Facebook page and also on YouTube. So a lot of you are probably going to find this through my Facebook page, but I will have links to my Spreaker and to my YouTube where you get different things along the lines of that, because some of you may be driving to work and you want to listen to the podcast, or maybe you just aren't a video person and just rather listen to the audio portion, so that will be on Spreaker for that. But Facebook and YouTube will have all that stuff. But coming along the lines of how this all started together was I kind of had a epiphany while taking a shower. I was actually going to cover, not cover, but I was going to record some video of the Lowell KV game, and I stayed in contact with Coach Newton. Me and him are friends, so I texted him. I was like, hey, after the game, give me a call. I have an idea that I want to throw by you real quick before I gave it to the big man upstairs, which is Coach Rao. And he was all for it, and Coach Rao called me the next day, and he was all for it, because I think it's more of a benefit for both me and the program, because it helps me with my skills of trying to interview and work a podcast and get into this media world, and with the program was kind of get the name out there, and maybe more people will be intrigued in doing this, so numbers are up, so I'm just saying, get the numbers up, all that different stuff along the lines of that. But I will leave you with that, and I will be posting every Thursday the interviews, and hopefully by Tuesday or Wednesdays I will have highlights of the game up on Facebook and YouTube as well. That won't go on Spreaker because it will just be the video portions of it, the things like that. So be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, share with your family, all that other good stuff. Be sure to tell me what you want me to do differently, what you want me to improve, or what you like about the podcast. This is Spartan Nation Podcast, and I'm Kyle Zavedich, and I wish you a good day and a good night whenever you're watching this, and hopefully catch you in the next podcast.
Hey, let's go! Get in here! Get in here right now! Get in here! Hey, we got 30 minutes for the rest of our lives! 30 minutes for the rest of our lives! That's our battle first down. It happens. We get the ball. I promise you one thing. We're going to hit somebody and we're taking downfield for a touchdown. I guarantee you that.
Here comes the